Captain Jake Martinez stared at the glowing screen in his command chair. The message had arrived 30 minutes ago, marked with the highest security codes Earth Defense Command had ever used. His hands shook slightly as he read it for the fourth time. The bridge of the UES Defender was quiet except for the soft hum of engines. They were patrolling the edge of the solar system, watching for anything unusual. Jake had been doing this job for 8 years. Nothing unusual ever happened. Until today. "Sir, you asked me to analyze those moon scans from last week," said Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks as he walked onto the bridge. Ryan was the ship's science officer, a tall man with messy brown hair who always looked like he had just discovered something amazing. Jake looked up from his screen. "What did you find?" Ryan pulled up a holographic display in the center of the bridge. It showed Earth's moon, slowly rotating. "These dark patches on the far side aren't natural craters. They're mining operations. Someone has been digging into our moon for decades." The captain felt his stomach drop. "Are you sure?" "Completely sure. The equipment signatures match nothing in our databases. It's alien technology, and it's been there for at least 50 years. Ryan's voice was steady, but Jake could see worry in his eyes. Jake's communication officer, a young woman named Lisa Park, suddenly turned in her chair. "Captain, I'm getting an emergency broadcast from Earth. President Carter is about to address the world." "Put it on the main screen." President Helen Carter appeared on the bridge's large display. She was standing behind the podium in the white House press room, looking more serious than Jake had ever seen her. Her gray hair was perfectly arranged, but her face showed the strain of someone who had not slept in days. "My fellow citizens of Earth," the president began, "today I must share with you a truth that will change how we see our place in the universe. For 50 years, we have not been alone. We have been watched, studied, and controlled by something called the Galactic Empire." Jake felt like the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. Around the bridge, his crew members stared at the screen in shock. President Carter continued, "The Empire has been mining our moon, taking samples of our people, and guiding our technology development. They treat us like animals in a zoo. They call us a protected species and think they have the right to decide our future." The president paused and looked directly into the camera. "I am here to tell the galaxy that Earth rejects their protection. We reject their control. We reject their right to treat human beings as their property." Jake's communication panel lit up with incoming messages from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Lisa Thompson's face appeared on a smaller screen. "All ship commanders, this is Admiral Thompson. You are to consider the President's speech as official military orders. Any Imperial vessel found in our solar system is to be treated as a hostile invader." On the main screen, President Carter was still speaking. "I have signed the Terra Doctrine into law. This document declares that all Imperial ships have exactly 72 hours to leave our solar system. Any Imperial vessel that remains after that time will be destroyed." Jake's weapons officer, Commander Nick Parker, whispered, "Sir, how are we supposed to fight an entire galactic empire with a few dozen ships?" Before Jake could answer, their sensors began beeping. Something was approaching from the outer system. "Captain," called out Lisa Park, "I'm detecting 15 ships moving toward us. They're not using any technology I recognize." Jake stood up from his command chair. "Battle stations. All hands prepare for contact with unknown vessels." The bridge lights dimmed to red as the crew prepared for combat. Jake watched the sensor display as the unknown ships moved closer. They were sleek and silver, much larger than the Defender. "Incoming transmission," Lisa announced. "Put it through." A voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect English but with a strange accent that sounded like music. "Human vessel, this is Imperial. Scout Commander Zektar. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded for inspection." Jake looked at his crew. Every face showed the same mixture of fear and determination. These were good people who had joined Earth's Space Force to explore and protect. Now they were being asked to fight for humanity's freedom. "This is Captain Martinez of the United Earth Ship Defender," Jake replied. "By order of the President of Earth and the Terra Doctrine, You are commanded to leave this solar system immediately. You have no authority here." There was a long pause. Then Zektar's voice returned, and now it sounded amused. "Captain Martinez, your species has been under Imperial protection for half a century. We have guided your development and prevented you from destroying yourselves. You cannot simply reject our authority. Watch us," Jake said simply. The Imperial commander's voice became cold. "You have one of your Earth minutes to surrender. If you refuse, we will disable your ship and take you to the Imperial Council for judgment." Jake looked around his bridge. One more time. Ryan was running final checks on their weapons systems. Nick was coordinating with the other Earth ships in the area. Lisa was recording everything for Earth Command. These people trusted him to make the right choice. "All Imperial vessels," Jake announced over the communication system. "You now have 71 hours and 59 minutes to leave our solar system. This is your only warning." The Imperial ships began moving into attack formation. Jake watched them on the display and felt something he had never experienced before. It was not fear, though he was afraid. It was not anger, though he was angry. It was something deeper. It was the feeling of a human being who refused to bow down. "Weapons charged and ready," Nick reported. "Shields at maximum power," added Ryan. Jake sat back down in his command chair and smiled. "Then let's show the galaxy what humans are made of." Admiral Kevin Walsh stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars blur past the windows. They were traveling faster than any human ship had ever gone before, heading toward the Imperial capital world of Xanthera Prime. 3 weeks had passed since the first battle at the edge of Earth's solar system. The Empire had retreated, but everyone knew they would be back. "Sir, we're approaching the Xanthera system," announced Lieutenant Amy Chen from the navigation station. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and nervous hands that never stopped moving. This was her first mission beyond Earth's solar system. Kevin nodded and looked at the woman sitting beside him. Ambassador Claire Nelson was Earth's best diplomat, a calm woman in her 50s who had spent years preparing for this moment. She wore a simple blue uniform with the Earth symbol on her shoulder. In her hands, she held a datapad containing the Terra Doctrine and humanity's formal demands. "Are you ready for this?" Kevin asked her quietly. Claire smiled, but he could see worry in her green eyes. "As ready as anyone can be to tell an empire that controls half the galaxy to leave us alone." The Liberty dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Xanthera Prime appeared on the main screen. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The planet was covered in massive cities that stretched from pole to pole. Thousands of ships moved between orbital stations that were bigger than Earth's moon. "Incoming transmission," called out Communications Officer Pete Sullivan. He was a red-haired man from Boston who always stayed calm no matter what happened. "Put it through," Kevin ordered. The main screen changed to show a creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. It had smooth gray skin, large golden eyes, and a beak-like mouth. When it spoke, its voice was deep and musical. "Human vessel, I am Imperial Controller Vexhai of the Calaxian Ruling Council. You are not invited to this system. State your business." Claire stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. "Controller Vexhai, I am Ambassador Claire Nelson, representing the United Earth Government. We are here to deliver an official diplomatic message." The alien's large eyes blinked slowly. "Diplomatic message? Your species has no diplomatic status with the Empire. You are a protected species under our care." "Not anymore," Claire replied firmly. "We reject your protection. We reject your authority over Earth and all human colonies. We are here to inform you that the Terra Doctrine is now in effect." There was a long silence. Then Vexhai made a sound that might have been laughter. "Ambassador Nelson, in the past 5,000 years, 847 species have attempted to reject Imperial protection. None have succeeded. You are welcome to try, but you will find that independence is not as simple as you believe." Claire activated her datapad and began reading. "The Terra Doctrine declares that all Imperial vessels, stations, and personnel are prohibited from entering any system controlled by humanity. This includes Earth, Mars colonies, Asteroid. Mining stations and the new settlements at Alpha Centauri. Impossible, Vexai said, but his musical voice had become harder. Your species lacks the military strength to enforce such demands. You have perhaps 50 armed vessels. The Empire has 50,000. Kevin stepped forward. Controller, we're not asking for your permission. We're informing you of our decision. The 72-hour deadline has passed. Any Imperial ship found in human space will be treated as an invasion force. On the other side of the galaxy, Commander Nick Parker was discovering just how serious the Empire's response would be. He was leading a patrol near Mars when his sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. Captain Morrison, are you seeing this? Nick called over the communication system to the nearby UES Boston. Captain Helen Morrison's voice crackled back. I see it, Nick. What the hell are those things? Hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter were dozens of structures that looked like massive metal flowers. They had been there for decades, disguised to look like natural asteroids. Now they were opening, revealing weapon systems that could destroy entire planets. Those aren't monitoring stations, Nick whispered to himself. They're weapons platforms. Back on Xanthera Prime, the meeting with Vexai was getting more tense. The Imperial controller had called in reinforcements. The bridge screen now showed 5 different alien species, all staring at the humans with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Let me explain something to you, Ambassador Nelson, Vexai said. The Empire does not negotiate. With protected species, we guide you, we protect you from yourselves. We decide what is best for your development. Claire's voice remained steady. And that is exactly why we're rejecting your protection. We don't need you to decide what's best for us. One of the other aliens, a creature that looked like a walking tree, spoke up. The humans show impressive courage, but courage without wisdom leads to extinction. Perhaps a demonstration is needed. Kevin felt his blood chill. What kind of demonstration? Your Mars colonies, Vexai explained calmly. We have maintained defense platforms throughout your system for 50 years. Originally, they were meant to protect you from outside threats. Now they serve a different purpose. On the Liberty's communication system, urgent messages began flooding in from Earth. Nick Parker's voice cut through the noise. Admiral Walsh, this is Commander Parker. We've discovered weapons platforms throughout the solar system. They're powering up. Repeat, the platforms are powering up. Claire stepped closer to the screen. If you attack our colonies, you'll prove that we were right to reject your protection. You'll show the entire galaxy that the Empire rules through fear, not guidance. Vexahai's golden eyes narrowed. And you will show the galaxy what happens to species that reject Imperial wisdom. Kevin made a decision that would change everything. Liberty to all Earth ships. This is Admiral Walsh. Begin Operation Defiance immediately. On Mars, Dr. Susan Adams was working in her laboratory when the alarms began ringing. She was a brilliant scientist who had been studying captured Imperial technology for months. Her research had revealed something amazing about human brains and alien technology. All personnel, this is Colonel Brad Murphy, came the announcement, over the base speakers. We are under attack. All civilians report to emergency shelters immediately. Susan grabbed her research files and ran toward the shelter. As she ran, she activated her communication device. Admiral Walsh, this is Dr. Adams on Mars. My research shows that human neural patterns can disrupt Imperial technology. Their systems aren't designed to handle our brainwaves. Kevin's voice came back immediately. Explain quickly, Doctor. Imperial technology relies on predictable thought patterns, Susan said as she reached the shelter. Human creativity and unpredictability can cause their systems to malfunction. If we can get close enough to their platforms, we might be able to disable them. On Xanthera Prime, Vexai was watching reports from the Sol system with growing confusion. Imperial weapons platforms that had worked perfectly for decades were shutting down one by one as human ships approached them. This is impossible, he muttered. How are they doing this? Claire smiled for the first time since arriving at the Imperial capital. Controller Vexai, you've spent 50 years studying humanity, but you never understood us. You thought our unpredictability was a weakness. You were wrong. The first battle was small, lasting only a few hours. But when it was over, humanity had destroyed or captured every Imperial platform in their solar system. More importantly, they had proven something that would shake the Empire to its core. Humans could fight back, and they could win. General Pat Rodriguez stood in the war room deep beneath Earth Defense Command. Around her were 20 of humanity's best military minds, all staring at a three-dimensional map of nearby star systems. Red dots showed Imperial bases. Blue dots showed human settlements. There were a lot more red dots than blue ones. "The Proxima Centauri Supply Depot," she said, pointing to a large red dot. "Intelligence says it feeds 17 Imperial outposts in this sector. If we can capture it, we cut off supplies to a huge area of their space." Colonel Dan Cooper, a quiet man with gray hair and careful eyes, leaned forward. "General, that depot has 500 Imperial troops. We can send maybe 50 soldiers. The math doesn't look good." Pat smiled grimly. "Dan, since when do humans worry about fair fights? We've never had fair fights. That's why we're still alive." 3 days later, Dan was leading the attack force toward Proxima Centauri. His ship, the UES Phoenix, was followed by 4 smaller vessels carrying Earth's best Special Forces soldiers. These were men and women who had trained for this mission, their entire careers, even though nobody had thought they would actually need to fight aliens. "Approaching the depot now," announced Lieutenant Tim Baker from the pilot's seat. "Their defenses are exactly where intelligence said they'd be." Dan studied the enemy base through his binoculars. It was a massive structure built into an asteroid, with docking bays for cargo ships and weapon systems covering every approach. It looked impossible to attack directly. "Remember the plan," Dan told his team over the communication system. "We don't fight them where they expect us to fight. We go where they think we can't go." The human ships split up and approached the depot from 6 different directions. Imperial sensors tracked them easily, and defensive weapons powered up to destroy the attackers. But the human ship suddenly changed course, diving toward the asteroid's surface instead of attacking the weapon systems. Inside the depot, Imperial Commander Seklon watched the human ships with confusion. He was a member of the Voltari species, tall and thin with blue skin and 4 arms. He had been stationed at this depot for 12 years and nothing interesting had ever happened. "Why are they flying toward the mining tunnels?" he asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, Commander. Should we fire on them?" Seklon hesitated. The mining tunnels were too small for ships to enter, and the weapons were too narrow to target effectively. It seemed like the humans were making a mistake. "Let them crash into the asteroid," he decided. "It will save us ammunition." But the human ships didn't crash. Instead, they landed in the mining tunnels and began unloading soldiers. Dan Cooper led his team through tunnels that were barely wide enough for humans, moving toward the depot's main power systems. "The beauty of guerrilla warfare," Dan whispered to his second-in-command, Captain Lucy Ford, "is that you don't fight the enemy's strengths. You find their weaknesses." Back on Earth, Dr. Tony Clark was making discoveries that would change everything. Humans thought they knew about the galaxy. He was examining captured Imperial equipment in his laboratory, trying to understand how their technology worked. "This is incredible," he muttered to himself as he studied an Imperial computer system. "Their entire civilization runs on algorithms. Every decision, every battle plan, every response is predetermined." He called up Admiral Walsh on his communication device. "Admiral, I need to report something important. Imperial society doesn't make individual decisions anymore. Everything is programmed. They've forgotten how to think creatively." Meanwhile, on a space station called Kepler Station, Ambassador Rebecca Lewis was having the most important conversation in human history. Kepler Station was neutral territory, where different species could meet safely. Rebecca was sitting across from a delegation of aliens who had asked for a secret meeting. The leader was a being called Zareth from the Zephyrian Collective. She looked like a tall human woman, but her skin was silver and her eyes were completely black. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes. "Ambassador Lewis, we have been watching your species' rebellion with great interest," Zareth said quietly. Many of us have wanted to challenge Imperial authority for centuries, but we lacked the courage. Rebecca leaned forward. What are you saying? We are saying that if humans can prove the Empire can be defeated, other species will join your cause. The Empire rules through fear, not strength. Break the fear, and their power crumbles. Back at the Proxima Centauri depot, Dan Cooper's mission was going better than anyone had expected. His team had reached the power core and was placing explosive charges when they made an unexpected discovery. "Sir," whispered Sergeant Mike Torres, "the Imperial troops aren't fighting back very hard. It's like they don't know what to do." Dan realized that Dr. Clark had been right. The Imperial defenders were following standard procedures for dealing with a direct assault. They had no procedures for dealing with humans crawling through mining tunnels and attacking from inside their own base. Within 2 hours, the depot was in human hands. More importantly, the 500 Imperial troops had surrendered rather than fight to the death. They seemed genuinely confused about why the humans weren't following proper battle procedures. Commander Seklon was brought before Dan as a prisoner. The alien looked more puzzled than angry. "Colonel Cooper, your tactics make no sense," Seklon said through a translation device. "Why did you not attack our strongest defensive positions? Why did you avoid our main weapons? This is not how civilized species conduct warfare." Dan almost laughed. "Commander, that's exactly why we won. You were prepared for civilized warfare. We gave you human warfare." News of the victory spread quickly throughout the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, species that had been under Imperial control for centuries began having secret meetings. The Tau Cetian Republic was the first to act, declaring independence from Imperial oversight just days after hearing about the Proxima Centauri raid. The Silicon-based Crystarch Confederacy followed within a week. Their leader, a being made of living crystal called Prime Resonance Kethal, sent a message to Earth that was broadcast throughout the galaxy. "The humans have shown us that the Empire's power is an illusion," the message said. "If a young species with primitive technology can defeat Imperial forces, then perhaps the Empire is not as strong as they claim." Within a month, 12 star systems had declared independence. The Empire's response was swift and brutal. War Marshal Drakthul, the Empire's most feared military commander, was given control of the 7th Fleet and ordered to crush the rebellion before it could spread further. Drakthul was a member of the warrior caste of the hegemony species. He stood 3 meters tall with armored skin and 6 arms that could move faster than human eyes could follow. He had never lost a battle in 300 years of service. "The humans will learn what happens to species that reject Imperial guidance," he announced to his fleet commanders. "We will make an example of them that will terrify any other species considering rebellion." The 7th Fleet consisted of 2,000 ships, including massive battlecruisers that could destroy planets. It was the largest military force assembled in galactic history, and it was heading directly toward Earth. But Admiral Martinez, now commanding the combined human and Allied fleet, was not planning to meet them in open battle. He had learned from Dan Cooper's success at Proxima Centauri. Sometimes the best way to win a fight was to change the rules of fighting. "They expect us to line up our ships and trade shots like gentlemen," Martinez told his fleet commanders during their final briefing. "Instead, we're going to show them what happens when humans stop being polite." Admiral Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, now the flagship of the Free Worlds Alliance fleet. Through the viewing window, he could see ships from 15 different species floating in formation around his vessel. Human ships, Zephyrian crystal vessels, Crystarch geometric constructs, and Tau Cetian bioships, all waiting for the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. "Sir, long-range sensors are picking up the Imperial 7th Fleet," announced Commander Lucy Ford from her station. She had been promoted after her intelligence work helped win the Proxima Centauri raid. 2,000 ships, just like our spies reported. Jake looked at the tactical display. His combined fleet had only 200 ships. The math was simple and terrifying. 10 Imperial ships for every one of theirs. "Captain Miller, are our allies ready?" Jake asked over the communication system. Captain Sarah Miller, commanding the Zephyrian vessel Harmony's Edge, responded immediately. "Admiral, My people have been waiting 300 years for this chance. We're ready. Prime resonance. Cathal's voice came through the speaker's neck, sounding like music played through broken glass. The Christarch Confederacy stands with humanity. Our ships are prepared to fight. Jake took a deep breath. President Carter had given him complete authority to conduct this battle, but she had also made something very clear. If they lost here, Earth would be defenseless. The Empire would make sure humanity never got another chance to rebel. All ships, this is Admiral Martinez. In 1 hour, we face the largest military force in galactic history. They outnumber us 10 to 1. They have better weapons, stronger shields, and thousands of years of military experience. He paused and looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They also have no idea what they're about to face. Across the galaxy, War Marshal Drakthul was preparing his own forces for battle. The massive alien warrior stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, surrounded by holographic displays showing every ship in his fleet. Fleet commanders, report status, Drakthul ordered in his deep, rumbling voice. One by one, his subordinates confirmed their readiness. The 7th Fleet was arranged in perfect formation, exactly as Imperial military doctrine required. Heavy, battleships in the center, fast cruisers on the flanks, support vessels in the rear. It was a formation that had conquered hundreds of worlds. War Marshal, our scouts report that the rebel fleet is gathering near the Kepler's Gate jump point, announced his intelligence officer, a nervous Calaxian named Veltar. They appear to be waiting for us. Drakthul's 6 arms moved as he adjusted the tactical display. Foolish. They choose to fight us in open space where our superior numbers and firepower will crush them quickly. Send the order to advance. We will end this rebellion in one decisive battle. But Admiral Martinez had no intention of fighting a traditional space battle. As the Imperial fleet approached Kepler's Gate, the human-led alliance put their real plan into action. All ships execute Operation Wildfire, Jake commanded. Instead of forming a battle line to meet the Imperial fleet, the Alliance ships scattered in all directions. Some dove toward the nearby planets, others headed for the asteroid fields, and a few seemed to retreat toward deep space. To Imperial observers, it looked like panic. "Sir, the rebels are breaking formation," Veltar reported to Drakthul. "They appear to be fleeing." Drakthul smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Of course they are. Order our ships to pursue and destroy them. Do not let any escape." This was exactly what Jake had hoped for. The Imperial fleet broke apart as different groups chased the scattered Alliance ships. Their perfect formation dissolved into dozens of smaller hunting groups, each following Imperial doctrine for pursuing fleeing enemies. "Phase 2, Jake announced quietly. The Alliance ships that had appeared to flee suddenly turned around, but they weren't alone anymore. Hidden behind asteroids, in the shadows of planets, and in the depths of nebulae, more ships appeared. The Alliance had secretly gathered twice as many vessels as the Imperials had detected. More importantly, each Alliance ship group now faced only a small number of Imperial pursuers instead of the entire 7th Fleet. Captain Dan Cooper, now commanding a strike force of human and Tau Cetian ships, found himself facing a group of 50 Imperial vessels in an asteroid field. The Imperial commander, following standard procedures, ordered his ships into a defensive formation. "This is where we show them the difference between doctrine and creativity," Dan told his crew. The Alliance ships didn't attack the Imperial formation directly. Instead, they used the asteroids as weapons, pushing large rocks into the Imperial ships with carefully placed explosions. When the Imperial commander tried to respond, he found his ships couldn't maneuver properly in the debris field his own doctrine had created. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Alliance ships used planets' gravity wells to slingshot around Imperial forces. They hid in nebulae and attacked from directions Imperial sensors couldn't penetrate. They used the debris from destroyed ships to create new obstacles and hiding places. But the most important part of the battle was happening in the minds of the Imperial soldiers themselves. For the first time in centuries, they were facing enemies who didn't follow the rules. Captain Rebecca Davis, commanding the UES Boston, was engaging 3 Imperial cruisers when she noticed something strange. The enemy ships were repeating the Same attack patterns over and over, even though those patterns weren't working. They're not adapting, she realized. They're following their programming even when it's getting them killed. This discovery spread quickly through the Alliance fleet. Imperial forces were locked into tactical responses that had been programmed into them over thousands of years. They literally couldn't think of new ways to fight. The battle turned from a desperate struggle into something unprecedented. Imperial ships began surrendering rather than continue fighting enemies they couldn't understand. War Marshal Drakthul watched his fleet fall apart with growing horror. Ships that should have easily destroyed the rebels were instead being outmaneuvered and captured. Entire squadrons were surrendering without firing a shot. "This is impossible," he roared. "Order all ships to return to formation. We will regroup and crush them with our superior firepower." But it was too late. Half his fleet was already destroyed or captured. The other half was scattered across the star system, many ships damaged and demoralized. The perfect Imperial formation that had conquered the galaxy was broken beyond repair. Admiral Martinez opened a communication channel to the entire battlefield. "War Marshal Drakthul, this is Admiral Martinez of the Free Worlds Alliance. Your fleet is defeated. I'm offering you the chance to surrender with honor." Drakthul's response came back immediately, filled with rage and disbelief. "Surrender? I am War Marshal of the Imperial 7th Fleet. I do not surrender to primitive species and rebel scum." "Then you'll die with your ships," Jake replied sadly. "But your crews don't have to die with you." What happened next shocked everyone, including Jake. Imperial ships throughout the fleet began broadcasting surrender signals, not because their commanders ordered it, but because individual crew members were making their own decisions for the first time in their lives. The Battle of Kepler's Gate lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Free Worlds Alliance had captured or destroyed the entire Imperial 7th Fleet. More importantly, they had proven that the Empire's military might was based on an illusion. As Jake watched the last Imperial ship surrender, Captain Lucy Ford approached him with a report that would change everything. "Admiral, we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. 47 star systems have declared independence in the last hour. The Imperial government is collapsing." Jake looked out at the wreckage of the most powerful military force in galactic history and realized that humanity had done more than win a battle. They had started a revolution that would remake the entire galaxy. "Send a message to Earth," he ordered. "Tell President Carter that the Empire's power is broken, the galaxy is free." 6 months after the Battle of Kepler's Gate, Ambassador Claire Nelson stood in the main hall of the United Nations building in Geneva. But this wasn't the old United Nations that had only represented Earth. This was something completely new. Representatives from 200 star systems filled the massive hall. Humans sat next to silver-skinned Zephyrians, crystal-based Crystarchs, and dozens of other species that had never worked together before. They were all here for the same reason: to build a galaxy where freedom mattered more than power. "The First Galactic Constitutional Convention will now come to order," Claire announced. Her voice was translated instantly into hundreds of different languages and communication methods. In the front row sat a figure that would have been impossible to imagine just a year ago. Former Imperial Overlord Vexhai, the same Calaxian who had laughed at humanity's demands for independence, now represented the reformed Calaxian Democratic Union. "Ambassador Nelson," Vexhai said as he stood to address the assembly, "before we begin, I must speak for my people and many others here today. We owe humanity an apology that is thousands of years overdue." The hall fell silent. Vexhai's golden eyes seemed to look at every face in the room as he continued. "For millennia, the Empire told ourselves that we were guiding younger species for their own good. We convinced ourselves that our control was protection, that our dominance was wisdom. We were wrong." His voice carried pain and regret. "Many of us knew this in our hearts, but we lacked the courage to admit it. Humanity forced us to face the truth about ourselves." Claire felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched this proud alien leader humble himself before the galaxy. "Overlord Vexhai, the past cannot be changed, but the future can be built differently. Admiral Lisa Thompson, now serving as Earth's first Minister of Galactic Affairs, stood up from her seat. "The Free Worlds Alliance Charter is simple," she announced, holding up a document that represented months of careful negotiation. "No species rules another. No system is forced to join. No military force can be used for conquest. Every member has an equal voice, whether they control one planet or 100. In the months following Kepler's Gate, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The old empire hadn't been destroyed completely. Instead, it had reformed itself into dozens of smaller governments, many of them democratic. For the first time in their history, Dr. Amanda Foster, now leading a joint research project involving scientists from 50 different species, had made the discovery that ensured humanity's permanent place in the new galactic order. Her team had finally figured out why human brains were so different from other species. "The human factor isn't just about creativity," she explained to the assembled delegates. "It's about something deeper. Most species develop along predictable paths. Their brains become specialized for specific types of thinking. Human brains stayed flexible." She activated a holographic display showing brain patterns from different species. "This flexibility allows humans to adapt to any situation, to think in ways that other species literally cannot imagine. But more importantly, we've discovered that this flexibility can be shared." The implications were staggering. Working with human partners, other species were rediscovering their own capacity for creative thought. Scientists who had followed the same research methods for centuries were suddenly making breakthrough discoveries. Artists were creating works that would have been impossible under imperial guidelines. Captain Jake Martinez, now Admiral of the Alliance Defense Force, was dealing with the practical challenges of keeping peace in a galaxy where old enemies were learning to work together. His fleet was no longer just human ships. Alliance vessels carried mixed crews from dozens of species, all learning from each other. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from deep space," announced Commander Lucy Ford from her position on the bridge of the Alliance flagship Unity. "Put it through," Jake ordered. The main screen filled with an image that made everyone on the bridge gasp. It was clearly an artificial structure, but unlike anything any known species had built. It was massive, beautiful, and completely alien. "This is Deep Space Monitor Station 7, came a voice over the communication system. "We're detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of the Andromeda Galaxy. Something is coming toward us, and it's big." Dr. Tony Clark, now serving as the Alliance's chief science advisor, ran scans on the approaching objects. "Admiral, these aren't natural phenomena. We're looking at a fleet of ships, but the technology is completely unknown. They're more advanced than anything in our databases." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Alliance was still new, still learning how to work together. They weren't ready for another major threat, but then a message came through from the approaching fleet, transmitted in perfect English. "Greetings, people of the Milky Way galaxy. We are the Andromedan Collective, representatives of the free worlds of our galaxy. We have been monitoring your recent transformation with great interest." The voice was clearly artificial, but somehow warm and friendly. "We wish to establish peaceful contact with your Free Worlds Alliance. We have much to discuss." President Helen Carter, now in her second term as both Earth's leader and the elected president of the Alliance Council, addressed the galaxy from her office in Geneva. "Citizens of the Free Worlds Alliance," she began, "today we face our greatest challenge and our greatest opportunity. We are no longer alone in our struggle for freedom. Across the vast distances between galaxies, other species have been fighting the same battles we fought." She looked directly into the camera, her voice filled with pride and determination. "1 year ago, Earth declared that we would no longer accept the Empire's control. We thought we were fighting for our own freedom. Instead, we started a revolution that has spread across 2 galaxies." The president paused, letting her words sink in. "The Andromedan Collective has sent us detailed records of their own struggle against Imperial control. Species across the universe have been fighting for the same basic rights. The right to govern themselves, the right to make their own mistakes, the right to grow and change without someone else deciding their future." Jake Martinez was preparing, his fleet for humanity's first contact with beings from another galaxy, when he received a personal message that made him smile. "Admiral, this is Captain Dan Cooper reporting from the Outer Rim. My exploration team has discovered something you need to see." The message included coordinates for a system at the very edge of Alliance space. When Jake arrived, he found Dan's ship orbiting a small blue planet that looked remarkably like Earth. "Sir, there are ruins on this planet," Dan explained. "They're millions of years old, but the symbols match writings we've found on dozens of other worlds. Someone was here long before any of our current civilizations existed." Dr. Foster's analysis of the ruins revealed something that would reshape how every species viewed their place in the universe. The ancient writings told the story of a galactic civilization that had risen and fallen long before humans had even evolved. "They faced the same choice we faced," Amanda explained to the Alliance Council. "They could either work together as equals, or they could build empires where some ruled over others. The ruins suggest they chose empire, and it destroyed them." The writings included a message clearly intended for whoever might find it millions of years later. "To those who come after us, remember that strength comes from cooperation, not domination. Learn from our mistakes." As the first ships from the Andromedan Collective entered Alliance space, Claire Nelson reflected on how much had changed since that day when Earth had declared its independence from Imperial control. Humanity had demanded to be treated as equals and discovered they were actually teachers. The galaxy hadn't needed humanity to follow the Empire's rules. It had needed humanity to show them there were no rules except the ones free beings chose to accept. The Alliance now included over 300 star systems, with more joining every month. Former Imperial worlds were learning democracy. Species that had been enemies for centuries were becoming friends. And now, contact with the Andromedans promised to expand that cooperation across the entire universe. President Carter's final words in her address to the galaxy captured what humanity had accomplished. "We didn't set out to lead a galactic revolution. We just refused to accept that this is how things have always been done was a good enough reason to give up our freedom. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is simply no." As Jake watched the Andromedan ships approach his fleet, he thought about the long journey from that first confrontation at the edge of Earth's solar system to this moment. Humanity had proven that even the smallest species could change the universe if they had the courage to stand up for what they believed in. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had hoped for.